Okay, it's 9 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting to order. And I'll ask, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? I have one, and it's G2, as I'm a director on the SegBay.
Duly noted.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move to public meetings. Welcome, good morning. Today there is one public information meeting regarding proposed development applications in accordance with the Planning Act. I am pleased to advise that this is being broadcast live on the Township's YouTube channel, where a recording of this meeting will be available. Notice of this meeting was sent out by first-class mail to all property owners within 120 meters, which is 400 feet, of the subject properties. Signage was also posted on the subject property to provide information about the applications. All of this was in conformance with the Planning Act process for a statutory public meeting. The purpose of the meeting is to inform and provide the public and the Planning and Development Committee with an opportunity to ask questions or express views with respect to the proposals. The format of the public information meeting will be as follows. One, the applicant's agent will generally explain the purpose and effect of the applications. Two, second, the township staff can provide further information and clarify any statements of the applicant or their agent. Three, next, the public will be permitted to ask questions and express views on the proposal, and then the public portion of the meeting will be closed. And four, lastly, members of the committee will be given the opportunity to ask questions for clarification on the proposal and provide comments. At the conclusion of the meeting, the applicant, their agent, and if required, township staff will be given the opportunity to respond to the questions and comments received. No decision will be made today following the public information meeting on the proposed subdivision and associated zoning bylaw amendment applications. Following this meeting, the information obtained, including from questions and comments submitted by members of the public and committee, will assist the county, township, and applicants team to determine next steps. Once the township and county are satisfied with the information provided by the applicant and their consultants, an additional public meeting will be scheduled. The township is the approval authority for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, subject to the two public meetings for which this committee may recommend the bylaws to be considered by council or ask for additional information prior to council's consideration. If in the future, the County of Simcoe, who is the current approval authority for the draft plan of subdivisions and or township council decide in favor of the applications by adopting recommendations from this committee, members of the public who have provided oral or written submissions but disagree with the decisions may be entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal under the Planning Act. Individuals attending the public meetings by YouTube, Zoom, or telephone may email or call the township's planning department to submit contact information to receive notice of the decision and the applications. So we'll go into the public information meeting for 8743 Highway 11 North and 3651 Menoke Beach Road, a plan of subdivision. So I'll ask if Eldon, Theodore, and or Katherine Rauscher from MHBC would take over and share your screen. And good morning, Eldon.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. I will begin by sharing my screen. And we'll start the presentation. And for those of you who were out last week at our open house, there are some similarities as it relates to this presentation, but I thank you again for showing up this morning. My name is Eldon Theodore. I am a partner at the firm MHBC, And here with me this morning is Katherine Rauscher, Senior Planner at MHBC, as well as Brittany Robertson, Civil and Transportation Engineer at Croziers and Associates, Scott Teroff, a Terrestrial Ecologist at Azimuth, and Michael Gillespie, a Fisheries Expert at Azimuth. And our team is here tonight to answer any questions of committee, as well as questions from the public. So just a quick brief overview of the subject lands themselves. They're located at the northeast corner of Highway 11 and Menoke Beach Road. It's approximately 45 hectares or 112 acres in size. Consists mainly of lands that have been used for agricultural purposes. There are, as you can see, some intermittent stream corridors that go across the property. And there are some woodlots in focused areas of the property itself. Surrounding the property to the north are existing commercial uses, as well existing historical residential subdivisions on the opposite side of Shadow Creek. To the east as well are existing wetland areas and woodlot areas, existing homes on Amigo Drive. To the south, south of the subject lands is Menoke Beach Road, and to the south is outside of the settlement area boundary, which is mainly agricultural uses. Further south, along Menoke Beach Road are existing residential homes and future residential homes, as well as the future municipal regional park. And to the west is a mixture of both agricultural and rural residential uses on both sides of Highway 11. The subject lands in the town's official plan are currently designated settlement living area, which is shown in kind of the taupe color here. This is a designation where the majority of new growth is to be directed in the township, and it permits a broad range of residential uses. That includes single attached dwellings to low-rise apartments. I'm just going to apologize for my dog in advance. It is what it is. There are also environmental protection areas that cross through the property. Those areas reflect existing drainage flow patterns. And these patterns in the official plan are approximate and expected that the actual boundaries of environmental features and their long-term protection are to be evaluated through an environmental impact study to ensure that ecological functions are confirmed and assessed. And that assessment was included as part of our submission. The property is currently zoned, the majority being rural, with a small component being environmental protection. And we'll be seeking amendment to the zoning to put in place zoning categories that fit the housing typology and reflect the two location of the environmental protection areas. So the subdivision that we're proposing will be a mixed residential plan that will include 534 units, of which 170 are seeking a single detached, 36-foot single detached dwellings. Those are in the light yellow. 149 are 40-foot single attached that are in the dark yellow, and 215 are proposed as 20-foot townhouse dwellings. Approximately 30% of the subdivision is reserved for environmental protection, as shown in green throughout the plan. There are other as well open space opportunities that we've identified for future amenity area opportunities. We have shown a potential for a waterfront access, and that's something I'll discuss a little bit later near the end of the presentation, and opportunity for a pumping station, part and parcel with the overall servicing strategy for the plan. And as you can see in the plan, what we've done is we've directed high density units closer towards Highway 11 and Menoke Beach Road, and stepping down as you move more towards the environmental features and the existing communities to the east. One other item, we have proposed two crossings, well, three crossings, but two roads across the environmental feature, and this is an attempt to limit the number of crossings to preserve the integrity feature that both includes the feature as well as environmental setbacks from those features. So the proposal also include a landscaping and opportunities for restoration and enhancement of buffers at the edges of the environmental protection areas. And as you can see on the plan here, we're including trail connections within the plan to connect within buffer areas and around the stormwater plans that include where we're looking at those enhanced landscaping opportunities. And just a bit of a zoom in on the left here, we're showing an amenity and a play space area that's proposed within the open space that will be in a central location to this community for children to play and to, as well as anchoring an anchoring destination along a contemplated trail network. And as you can see on the right here, we see the stormwater management pond is also playing an active role in the trail connectivity and being an active and more of a feature rather than just a function within the plan. And similarly, just from a vehicular perspective, we're introducing a modified grid network that will connect the community, break up the overall size of the property, and provide for vehicular access throughout in a looping fashion. And our team has prepared a transportation impact study that assesses this local road network, and it has been submitted, and we anticipate it will be reviewed by both township staff, county staff, as well as MTO and any other peer reviewers that may be retained to support that review. And any recommendations that flow from that, we will respond actively and make necessary modifications to adjust. Similarly, we're seeking a pedestrian circulation network in the form of sidewalks that's shown where we contemplate those to be within the dark green, as well as an informal being a trail network, as mentioned, that's shown in the lighter green, provide for enhanced pedestrian networks and connectivity through the plan. And just we're showing these opportunities for both formal and natural walking to provide a great experience for future residents. And this is just an example of the quality of the homes that Live Communities builds. And this is an example of the type of product that's being considered within the subdivision, a range of single detached homes in terms of architectural detailing, use of materiality, the color palette. Those are all things that are purposeful to create a unified vision. And the above photos are as I mentioned, a sampling of what that would look like. And that extends as well to the townhouses. So they would continue that same vernacular, the same style, to create a local identity within this subdivision. And the subdivision design, when laid out, was developed after we had undertaken environmental review of features on the property. This plan here illustrates the terrestrial features such as floodplains, wetlands, and the associated buffers that we need to take into consideration, significant trees and vegetated communities that are intended to be protected. So part of the development of this plan was taking consideration those features and ensuring that we maximize their protection and balancing the ability to develop with the need for protection. And similarly, we also consider the aquatic features on the property and conserving fish habitat to ensuring that the proposed development maintains appropriate both water quality, as well as maintaining flow patterns for the existing aquatic habitat to thrive among this proposed development. And our civil engineers have proposed that both water and wastewater occur through municipal servicing connecting to the existing municipal system within Westshore. This plan shows the proposed servicing strategy through the proposed road network. And what's also been proposed are options for connections to the existing system. There are a couple ways in which those connections can be made. They've been presented and submitted as part of our functional servicing and stormwater management submissions. And we're looking for input from township engineering staff to determine the most appropriate route to achieve this development. And I touched earlier on the stormwater management. These proposed 2 stormwater management ponds will direct all stormwater to these locations to provide both quality and quantity controls. And these ponds are also been designed to support the health of the adjacent wetlands and the water course to ensure that this development does not result in an impact, and that water that flows from this development is clean and supports the longevity of those ecological features in the area. So in terms of the zoning itself and the combination of mapping in itself is really just showing that technically how we would amend the zoning, but the principle is that we would rezone the site with a combination of environmental protection for the ecological areas and their associated setbacks and buffers built into that zone. The residential R1 for single attached residential zones of all sizes within the majority of the balance of the plan, and multiple residential RM1 for all townhouses. And we also anticipate site-specific provisions on provisions such as lot area and frontage, coverage, setbacks, all those particular items that will help to really refine the zoning, bring it into a more current standard that would reflect the both the minimum density objectives from a county and township perspective, as well as housing expectations within the market. And our submission is supported by a number of technical reports, and this is just here an example of those reports that have been submitted. And for the public's benefit, they are available on the county's development website for this development application, so they can be easily downloaded for each, if anyone wants a copy. And this has been circulated and will be reviewed and assessed by township, county, MTO, and other applicable agencies, as well as other applicable peer reviewers to ensure that they meet standards. And following that feedback, change to the proposal may occur as a result of the critical comments that we received through the process. Just before I end off and concluding, I do want to note that at our open house last week, when we presented this proposal, we did receive feedback on a number of items that included a question mark around the access to Shadow Creek, which is indicated as being privately owned. So that's something that we're taking back and we're assessing and we're determining, ensuring that we have all our information and then making the necessary modifications as part of a formal resubmission. There was comments about silt and construction runoff and overall stormwater management control relative to wetlands and the existing Shadow Creek, and we received and acknowledged those comments. There was a lot of comments relative to traffic controls, relative to the 2 access points on Menoke Beach Road. We heard that loud and clear, as well as transportation concerns relative to the no southbound along the interchange with Highway 11 and Menoke Beach Road. So we've heard those concerns as well. We've taken that back, and our civil engineer taken both of those, and that will be something that we'll be looking into as will the review process. And we did hear some comments about species at risk to consider, particularly blue heron and river otter. So our ecologists have picked that up, and comments about the scale of development, which we do acknowledge. And what I just want to indicate is that we're taking this feedback in, and in combination with the technical comments to the review, we do intend on responding to each comment that was received at the open house, as well as comments that are received this morning, and providing a formal detailed response and demonstrating revisions or modifications that respond to those as part of our formal resubmission through the process. With that, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak, and all of our team is here to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Eldon. So the information from the public meeting, will that be available for all of council to preview as well?
Yes, we can make that available as well. I believe we did provide a copy of that presentation to your township staff.
I'm talking
But
about the questions and your answers to their questions.
oh yeah, what we intend to do is address that through formal resubmission. So
Okay.
what the feedback was and how we were addressing that. It will be a separate item, separate from the technical responses.
Great. Thanks, Eldon. So at this point, I'll ask our senior planner, Katie Mandeville, if she would like to add to her her report as well. Katie, are you there?
Thank you, Chair Taylor. I think Eldon did a great job at summarizing the applications. I do just want to stress that this is early times for this application. Township staff and our consultants, we've not completed a review by any means of this application. So it is possible, as Mr. Theodore said, that the application will change. However, it's just early stages. I just wanted to stress that. We did receive a few comments that I'll share later in the agenda from neighboring property owners. However, I do believe the open house that Eldon spoke to last week did accomplish what it was set out to do. There was approximately 30 to 40 residents there. And I do believe some good dialogue was had between the consulting team and those residents, as well as some members of council that were able to attend. So township process-wise now, we are reviewing all of the submissions, of course, with our township consultants, as well as township departments and the County of Simcoe and MTO. So we will be providing a response to the developers team as soon as we have that information back. It is quite a large subdivision in terms of scale for the township. However, it is a growth center for the township. As council's aware, we are only basically permitted to grow and develop in the settlement areas, particularly those that have water and wastewater. So Coldwater and Westshore are pretty much the only places we can expand our population. So just something for council and members of the public to keep in mind, that the province and the county does direct growth to these areas. And this is one of those areas. However, that doesn't mean we don't look at things such as the MTO comments or people's comments regarding the access on Highway 11 and how that's going to work with our existing township infrastructure. So it is a complicated process, the review, and it is early days. So I think if council has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. But otherwise, nothing further, Chad.
Okay, yes, thank you, Katie. So I'll ask if any persons present on Zoom or the telephone who have either questions or comments on the application will now be invited to speak. Township staff will call upon each registered participant. Please unmute yourself when called upon and turn on your camera if you wish. You will be required to give your full name, address for the minutes. Please note that your comments will also be recorded and live streamed to the township's YouTube channel and will remain online. The township does not have the ability to edit the live stream to remove any personal information provided in the course submitting comments or questions. So I'll ask Brad Oster, are there any members of the public that would like to speak?
Thank you, Chair Taylor. No one has registered to speak this morning.
Okay. I'll give, does he, any more to add, Katie, from what you said there, or you're okay for, because it's quite early in the process, I guess.
Correct, Chair Taylor, it is early in the process. I did just want to share a couple of items of correspondence that came in after the agenda was published. So just to acknowledge those, Brent and Sandy Downer from Wood Avenue, they didn't specify their exact address. However, they are mostly concerned about the infrastructure being townships roads, capacity for those township roads, as well as access on and off Highway 11. So that is a comment I will share with MHBC as well, since that just came in last night. And then two additional comments that were previously shared with MHBC. One is from Jacqueline Evans on Westshore Crescent. She is particularly concerned about the access to Shadow Creek, the number of people wanting to access Shadow Creek, and vehicular access through that point. So I think that's something that the developers team is already looking into. However, that will be considered as part of our review. And the third one was from Laura and Glenn Berry. They did outline a number of questions that would probably be more better detailed through the response. We did share this already with MHBC, but it was just submitted the other day. So no probably opportunity to directly address all of the questions. However, many of the questions here are also in regards to Shadow Creek and that proposed access or parkland to Shadow Creek, as well as some wildlife and wetland type questions. So something for the environmental consultants as well to review. So I just wanted to note those 3 letters of correspondence from neighboring property owners that we did receive, and that will be forming part of the public record on this.
Okay, thanks, Katie. So before moving to committee, do you have anything more to summarize, Eldon, or are we okay to proceed to the committee?
Through Mr. Chair, I think you're okay to proceed to committee.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll open up to the committee. If the committee has any questions, please acknowledge. I'll ask Mayor Burkett, and then Member Cox, and then Member Dunlop. You're on mute there, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, through the chair. And I think, Katie, I think I know the answer, but parkland dedication, this was dedicated, our proposed community center area, that was the parkland dedication from the previous owner, is that correct?
Through you, Chair Taylor, if I can, to Member Burkett, that is correct, Mr. Mayor. So outlined within the staff report, I should have mentioned there is a staff report in the agenda, very brief overview of the process without any planning analysis. It was stated in the submission that this land was part of that original parkland dedication for where the future community center may go, as well as the 2 other subdivisions on Menoke Beach Road. However, I did note in the submission that there is some additional parkland being proposed. So I think that would be over and above what has already been contributed. Certainly staff are going to look into the previous arrangement. It predated all of our time here. I know Mr. Theodore did work on that as well. So we will be reviewing that. However, it was part of that original conveyance there on Menoke Beach Road.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Member Cox.
Yeah, I guess if there's any other people who have extra questions, they send them into the township through the chair to Katie. Yep, okay. The Board of Education, is it too early to be asking if they have been notified due to the numbers that we're proposing up in Westshore? Because that school is pretty well already got portables, and I'm just not sure if the board is aware or what they're going to do about it. Through the chair, Katie or Eldon, one of the 2.
Through the chair, if I could, to Member Cox. Certainly the school board was circulated by ourselves as well as the County of Simcoe. I don't believe have received any comments. They would have been on the agenda. So no, we do not have any comments from the school board yet. However, I do believe, as you've said, Member Cox, that will come up through this process. Certainly planning staff here is aware from latest conversations with the school board that no additional portables could be accommodated at the existing school. So that likely will come up as part of this discussion as well.
Okay, and Eldon, that's something that MHBC will look into too?
Yes, and through my experience with developments where school boards do have capacity issues, it's typically the school board's decision as to how they deal with it, and it could be a combination of busing into other, school jurisdictions in an interim while capacity or new decisions are made, or when provincial funding comes in that provides for additional opportunities. But I look forward to the feedback from the school board. To date, I haven't seen a situation where the school board says no. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry for cutting you off.
Okay, through the chair to either Katie or Eldon. At your presentation the other night, you basically said that the MTO and the township were responsible for ensuring the safe highway entrance and exit. And I just wondered, is that something that our master transportation plan looks at, or does MHBC also help with that? Because it's due to the fact you're building that we have an issue.
If I can rephrase what was said last week, we proposed a transportation plan, and we've assessed the transportation networks and have come to the conclusion that our engineers come to the conclusion that the system is acceptable in its current situation. However, we are not the final approval authority. It's a combination of both the township, county, as well as MTO, because this is a provincial highway. So the final say on what is appropriate from a transportation perspective will come from a combination of those authorities in combination with our work. So we'll be working closely with all three agencies to come to either whether it is that this is acceptable or whether offsite improvements are required to ensure it's acceptable based on the long-term plan, or whether what comes out of this process further informs the transportation network that I believe, transportation work that I believe is ongoing or has been completed relative to the Westshore settlement area. So it is not that it's on the township, county, and MTO to confirm that it's safe. It's everyone's responsibility, but we propose a plan, and this is the start of that process.
Okay, and another one, when you showed the picture of the green space with public space as a place for children, is that a passive park that without playground equipment, or is that decided, or is it just like a green space that's passive that and left the way it is?
So the space that we've shown right now is active. We've shown a playground in that area, a modern playground that meets current, health and safety standards. At this point, and this is something for discussion through the process, we haven't determined whether it's something that's managed by this subdivision or whether it's public. As mentioned earlier in the presentation, the subdivision has dedicated its parkland dedication, but we recognize that this community may need more than just a regional park and something local and walkable that the children can walk to, or having trail opportunities is good for community building, and it's good for residents, and it's the right thing to do. So those components are part of the plan, and everything that we show right now is at a level of active play. Okay. In terms of playground, in terms of trail, but there's lots of room for passive opportunities as well.
And Eldon, is that, through the chair to Eldon, and is that a playground that the lived community will build?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Member Dunlop.
Okay, through the chair. So most of the questions have been asked already, but I've got a couple more, and I'm going to direct them to Eldon. You talked about the stormwater plan, and that looked great. You talked about trails around it. So you're encouraging people to go down and look at the ducks and the frogs or whatever. My concern is, will there be a chain link fence closer to the water that you get young children bike down there? And I'm afraid that if there is lots of water in there, and I know they're built to absorb water, but it isn't absorbed all the time. So I'm just wondering, at a point, would there be a chain link fence to keep people out of the water itself? One question.
So that's a great question. I actually may want to defer to your staff on their stormwater management standards, and if that is something that is going to be imposed on the ponds, because the ponds eventually will be public, or whether there is a design solution that doesn't include ponds. What we had outlined in our open house last week was that these ponds are shallow ponds. They're not deep ponds. So the water collection, when it tops up, is really at the 100-year event, which is rare and few and far in between. So those opportunities for safety are safety concerns are quite limited. That it shouldn't warrant the need for a safety fence 24/7. But I'm not sure if maybe Derek Burke or someone from the town can advise on what the typical standard is for stormwater management ponds.
Okay, I think Katie's got an answer for us.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. To Member Dunlop's question and Mr. Theodore's response, this is something that will be reviewed as part of the submission, so we don't necessarily have an answer to that. In the past, the township's engineering standards have required these to be fenced. However, as council is aware, we recently retained a new engineering firm, and the engineering standards are something that we're looking at currently. So that's an item for discussion, basically, and it's a comment we can take back certainly and look at during this process.
So just further that to Eldon, it's like, I know you're talking about 100-year floods, but the rains we're getting now, and just look across Canada, they're not normal with our climate change. And kids love to play in the water. They're in our nature too, that adults do too. And we only need one catastrophe, and I don't want that to ever happen. So I would like that to be back to Katie now. I would like our engineers to look at that. So that's my first question. My last one to Eldon again through the chair is the canal. There was a lot of talk about that last week, and hopefully you mentioned it today, but it's a real worry about the residents that already live there and own that canal. So I would just like live just to forget about it if possible. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. I know you've got it in your questions. So thank you.
We do. Thank you, McDonald. And just on the last item about the stormwater, I can tell you in other jurisdictions, Kitchener, Windsor, Sarnia, I have done subdivisions where the park was also a stormwater management overflow, and it was intended to flood. And that was a park with playground equipment and other items. And the mechanism that they used in those cases was there was a kind of like a stand in which, if water did accumulate at a certain point, that stand would then have a light that would turn on, and it would indicate that this area is not habitable. But it takes a long time for that buildup to happen. So it's apparent when that happens. But I do take your comment, and this is a different scenario in which we're not promoting people to walk into the pond, we're promoting people to walk around the pond. So there may be different design solutions rather than a chain link fence that may achieve the same. But we're happy to work with your staff to ensure that there's a good balance on that promotes creativity and exploration of children while keeping them safe.
Yeah, so just through the chair further to that, Eldon, it's just like there's going to be a lot of homes in there with a lot of kids, and kids don't look at that red flashing light if they see a frog and they want to catch it. So I just want to be on the safe side. If there's some kind of a chain link fence closer to the water's edge that the kids can't get into the deep section, I would be pleased with that. So I'll leave it alone. You've got my question, so is Katie, and we'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. I just a quick question for either for Katie or Derek there. What does this do in terms of capacity wise? Like how much can our water and sewer handle? And it's a pretty good chunk at 500 plus homes. And I don't know if you can answer that, Katie, or if Derek could answer that. Hi, Derek.
Good morning. Thank you. Yes, through the chair. So we certainly have, this is a new file, and I think Katie's stressed that point. So what we have is an uncommitted capacity report that was developed last year. It identified the area as future potential, but certainly did not include it in its provisional distribution list. And so there's certainly a fairly large demand at the size of this development on that system. We do know that preemptively and probably with foresight in mind, we have kicked off municipal class EA to already consider the expansion of that plant. That's a project that is in Capital Works for 2022, and that's recognizing those future possibilities like this site that haven't achieved draft plan approval yet, but are in a position, or at least we're aware of the land mass that needs to be serviced in the area.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if no one else has anything else, I'll ask Allison, our clerk, if you have a motion.
There we go. Certainly. So the motion reads that planning report number P22-017 dated April 20th, 2022, with respect to draft plan of subdivision SVT 2201 and zoning bylaw amendment Z 2202 applications for 8743 Highway 11 North and 3651 Menoke Beach Road be received as information.
Do you have a mover there for that? A move by member Besworth, second by member Stevens. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. So I'll, if there's no further comments, this public information meeting is now closed and we'll go back to the agenda. Thank you. Thanks, Theodore, Eldon, and please have a great day.
Have a great day, everyone.
Okay, we'll just go to the consent agenda. Does anyone have anything they'd like to pull from the member Cox?
Yeah, E 2.3, please.
Okay. We'll put that to new business. And then we have section F, approval of the agenda.
So motion reads that the agenda be adopted, including consent items with the exception of item number E 2.3.
Okay, we got a mover for that, please. Moved by member Cox, second by member Burkett. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, we'll go into reports from officials. Presentation from West Crown MHBC regarding Municipal Comprehensive Review, County of Simcoe. Good morning, Wes.
Good morning, Chair Taylor. Good to see the committee. I actually do have a presentation, which I hope I will be able to share. Just get confirmation from Allison that I'm able to do that.
Okay.
Go for it.
Please do.
So hopefully everyone can see the presentation. Chair Taylor, just to confirm, there's about 15 slides here. I don't intend to go into all the detail that the mayor and deputy mayor would have been exposed to in an through about a 3-hour meeting last week. What I want to do is to highlight some of the particular issues that I think Severn Council should be aware of, and to seek some direction from Council today such that we can work with your staff to submit material to the county particularly by its deadline for the provincial agricultural system mapping, which is actually before your next council meeting, which would confirm the results of your committee meeting today. So again, a brief update on the county MCR, and in particular how this applies to the township of Severn. If I can go to the next slide. So very brief agenda, what we heard at the county MCR workshop last week on April 12th. What does this mean for Severn, particularly with respect to lands needs, the provincial natural heritage system mapping and the provincial agricultural system mapping, and what we're recommending by way of directions for Severn's response to the April 12th workshop at the county, and also the deadlines, particularly for the provincial agricultural mapping. And then just highlight what happens next in the MCR, and Severn and other stakeholders' continued ability to input into that process. So, Mr. Chairman, members of committee, you'll recall that in November and in December of last year, Severn submitted comments to the county on the draft lands needs assessment, and on the draft provincial NHS mapping, and also the proposed and draft provincial agricultural system mapping. The material that was released and presented on April 12th, we have reviewed with staff, and what we've confirmed is that only some of Severn's requested refinements to the provincial NHS mapping were included in the refined mapping that was presented at County Council last week. And I have on the next slide, I'll highlight in particular the big issues that we believe are still required to be addressed in the provincial NHS mapping that will form the basis of an overlay designation in the updated county official plan. What we heard last week, and I think in particular, Mayor Burkett will confirm this, that what the county had indicated was that the refinement of the provincial NHS can only be based on a limited set of criteria that are set out in provincial guidelines. And I'm not going to review them each here, but they're listed on this slide. And what we think the county was told last week is that a lot of the requests that stakeholders, property owners, and municipalities like Severn, that the changes that were requested can't be made on the basis of this limited list of criteria or refinements that are permitted to be made to the provincial NHS. And I'll go to the next slide. So this is just a clip of the proposed provincial NHS mapping. You can see it in green. It covers, I believe, about 70% of the land area of the township of Severn. What was not removed from the provincial NHS mapping was the South of Division Road secondary plan area, which is a specific recommendation that council made to the county. Some, but not all, of the shoreline communities have been excluded from the provincial NHS, and we can't understand the reason or rationale or the justification for excluding some, but not all, of the approved and existing shoreline communities within Severn. And other refinements, such as pits and quarries, for example, were not removed mapping. And so what you'll see later in the presentation is that we think we should continue to request and recommend to the county that these removals be made, such that they can then be reflected in the township's updated official plan, and probably most critically, create a more favorable and positive planning framework on a go-forward basis for Severn as it applies to the implementation of the provincial NHS mapping. What we also observed was that none of the Severn requested refinements to the provincial agricultural system review were made. And again, what we heard last week was that the refinements are limited to a very specific list of criteria contained in provincial guidelines. And what we're recommending is that the changes that Severn has already requested to this mapping, because you'll recall that the provincial agricultural system mapping will form the basis of the new agricultural designation in the county official plan, and it will have to form the basis, once approved, of the new agricultural designation in the Severn official plan. And our specific recommendation is that those refinements that you've already made, that we reiterate those requests to county council and county staff. And in particular, and similar, if not identical to the provincial NHS mapping, the secondary plan, the South of Division Road secondary plan, is still included in the provincial agricultural mapping. And we think that is not appropriate, does not reflect the county's current approach to the secondary plan within its official plan, treating the secondary plan area basically as a settlement area. And the provincial agricultural mapping has been excluded for other settlement areas in the county. And we can touch on that a little bit further, subject to questions. The county, as part of its April 12th update on the MCR, included a revised and updated lands needs assessment. I think what the mayor and deputy mayor would have heard is that all of the municipalities in the county are forecast to grow, both from a population and an employment perspective, to 2051. Severn's population is proposed to increase by 21% to 17,790 person by 2051, and the employment growth, which represents a 40% growth, would grow by about 1,620 jobs to 5,640 jobs by 2051. And while those growth figures look significant, and I'll touch on this a little bit later, they represent a decrease in the share of Severn's growth based on the current shares within the currently approved county official plan to 2031. So the population allocation to Severn in the proposed lands needs assessment represents 1.6% of the county's population growth to 2051 and represents 2% of the county's employment growth to 2051. And that represents, I think, as we have reported last fall, that represents a significant change to the current shares within the existing official plan. So what do those mean? It means that, that there's no need for a community land area expansion and no need or justification for a settlement area boundary expansion in the township of Severn to 2051. You'll note that we use the term Northern Regional Municipal Area, and the county in its lands needs assessment, as they have done throughout this process, have divided the county into two areas: the northern regional municipalities, which include Severn, and the southern regional municipalities, and then have provided differing population and employment allocations based on those two broad geographic areas. So the conclusion that the county has come to in its lands needs is that that there's no need for additional community area or urban lands for residential growth in the northern regional municipal area, and as such, no need for settlement area boundary expansion in Severn to 2051. As well, while there is a need for additional employment lands in the northern regional municipality, they've not allocated any of that to Severn based on their analysis. So there's no justification for additional employment lands at this time based on the draft lands needs assessment. This slide, and I apologize in advance for the scale. At the end of the presentation, I have links to the county's website where all of the material, the source material for the presentation today can be found, both the staff report, the Hemson Lands Needs Assessment, and the Provincial Natural Heritage Mapping and their report that goes along with it. Those can all be downloaded and reviewed. What I really wanted to do here in this slide was just provide an indication of what the county has concluded in their proposed lands needs study. They're showing that there's 68 hectares of employment land supply in Severn currently, and with the standard methodology approach for refinements, and those are the net to gross and removing any long-term vacancies. they're showing that Severn has a supply of 53 hectares of employment lands, and that based on their calculation, in particular, the estimated employment density of 20 jobs per net hectare, they've concluded that there is actually no need for additional employment lands in Severn to 2051. However, and as we've pointed out to the county previously last fall in the submissions on the first draft of the lands needs assessment, that there's new and emerging development constraints, in particular MTO's most recent hardline restrictions on access to provincial highways, a series of unevaluated wetlands within some of the existing employment lands within Severn, servicing limitations for those lands where they're privately serviced in particular, et cetera, that those all significantly impact the amount and supply of developable employment lands in Severn. And we believe that the estimate that the county's used, either the gross 68 hectares or the net 53 hectares, overstates the supply of employment lands in Severn. And you'll see in our recommendations for a response to the county, we think that needs to be the subject of some more and some very specific detailed review between Severn and the county. You heard last week the schedule, or at least the tentative schedule for the MCR, and it really is a partial schedule. April 29th is the deadline for the consultation period for the provincial agricultural system mapping refinements. And so that's, as you'll know, is in advance of your next council meeting. And so this is principally why we want to get some direction today to submit comments to the county. May 20th is the release of the recommended mapping. And I won't read the rest of it, but the schedule really focuses on the lands needs assessment, the growth management OPA, the provincial NHS refined mapping, et cetera, which are really 3 of the 11 components of the county's MCR. So we don't know what the schedule is for the balance of the county's MCR program at this point. So quickly, what does this mean for Severn? Severn's plan to grow to 2051. The lands needs assessment, I think, won't impact on your ability to consider, review existing designated lands within settlement areas within Severn. But your share of growth at 1.6% to 2051 is lower than your current share to 2031 within the current county official plan. That at least based on the draft lands needs assessment, there are no justifications for a settlement area boundary required to accommodate your growth to 2051. What I will note, and this gives me a significant amount of comfort, and I hope it does for Severn and the other municipalities in the county as well, the county's current approach to its MCR, which is to undertake these individual exercises and proceed with individual official plan amendments, as opposed to one complete MCR in a replacement county official plan, means that the county will have to remain on the 5-year review of its official plan. And that means they'll have to update and review the lands needs assessment in the MCR every 5 years. And so that means the growth allocations, the shares, the employment land needs will be subject to a regular review and updates based on actual growth results. And I think as your senior planner and I discussed yesterday and recently, is that if you look at the Severn's growth in the previous 10 years, what the county has forecast really reflects that. But our expectations are that there's going to be significant uptick in the growth rates in the county over the next 5 years. And the county's current approach to its official plan review and update to bring it into conformity with the growth plan will obligate them to review and update each of these components every 5 years, so that as growth in Severn increases over the next 5, 10, 15 years, the county will be obligated to review and update those numbers and reconsider the allocation of growth amongst the lower tier municipalities. You've probably heard, and certainly the mayor and deputy mayor would have heard, that the growth allocations are minimums that the municipality needs to achieve, but that based on land supply, based on growth rates and absorption rates, if the township exceeds those, the county will need to reflect those in their updates down the road. We believe that review of employment land should occur as part of the county MCR, their phase 2, and as part of the official plan review as well, because I think we have some real and legitimate concerns that the township's ability to accommodate its forecast employment growth may not be achievable based on the current supply of employment lands in Severn. The refinements to the should be requested to the provincial NHS and the agricultural system mapping that were already submitted to the county should be supported. That the South Division Road secondary plan area and the shoreline communities should be excluded from both of those new maps that the county is producing, and that we should review the schedule for the new official plan. And we'll work with your staff on that as we move forward. So the directions for the response for Severn to the county, one is to request an MCR project meeting. You would have heard, at least the mayor and deputy mayor would have heard last week, that the new director of planning and chief planner has offered to meet with each of the local municipalities, and that the county councillors would be invited to those meetings as well. And that meeting's already been requested, and we're trying to find a date. And we would encourage the mayor and deputy mayor to make themselves available to sit down with the county to review the draft reports at this point in time. We want to specifically, I think, and critically reiterate the requests to the county that the South Division Road secondary plan area and the shoreline communities be excluded from the provincial NHS and the provincial agricultural system mapping. We think that without doing that, there will be significant implications and consequences, not only to the township's new official plan, but to the property owners and to the people that live within those areas and those communities that we think aren't really the intention of the implementation of the growth plan in Severn Township. And lastly, for the county to work with staff and your consultants to review the supply of employment lands as part of the lands needs assessment, because critically, I think they've got it wrong. I think there's things that need to be updated in their land supply analysis, and we want to make sure that that gets reflected in the final lands needs study as well. So what happens next? The meetings with county councillors and local staff to be arranged, and we've noted that those outreaches to the county have already occurred. The deadline for comments on the agricultural mapping is due on the 29th, and we want to get those comments submitted to the county before that deadline. And as you would have seen in the schedule, there will be a series of public open houses and public meetings in June of this year, at least tentatively scheduled, regarding both the lands needs assessment, the growth management OPA, the provincial NHS mapping and its corresponding OPA. And through that public process, there will be an opportunity for further input by Severn to County Council to request further changes and refinements as necessary. So the door is not shut. with respect to input to the county MCR, but deadlines have been established, and it's critical, I think, for Seven to continue the good work that it already has, which is to input into the process to make sure that at least the county and its county council, its staff, and its consultants understand the position of Severn throughout the MCR process. I believe that's the last of the slides. I've included on this slide the links to the county YouTube channel, so that if there's anybody that wants to follow that link to review the MCR meeting last week, they can do that. I've also included a link to the county MCR page so that the reports, I believe the intention is that this presentation will be posted on the municipality's website, so that Severn residents who want to dig a little bit deeper into this subject will be able to find these links in the PowerPoint and then review the material on the county's webpage. Chair Taylor, that's probably longer than I wanted to be, but I'm certainly willing to answer any questions that the committee has. And we will be looking for, I believe that there's been a draft motion prepared. We're looking for direction from committee to proceed to make the submissions to the county by the deadlines that they've submitted and created.
Okay, thanks, Wesley. If you could unshare your screen there, and we'll open it up for the committee if they've got any questions. Member Dunlop has her, and then Member Burkett.
So through the chair to West Crown. I seriously don't think staff and Hempson are even listening to us. So the fact that we can get a meeting, we can't speak strongly enough to get them to listen to us. It's just like they don't even hear us. So if those comments have to be in by the 29th, that's next week. Do you have any proposed dates at all yet?
So for the Mr. Chair, through to the councillor, no, we've suggested a couple dates, but they've not confirmed anything. I think we proceed with reiterating the previous comments that have been submitted to the county, particularly around the secondary plan area and the shoreline communities. The meeting with them will be to try to get a better understanding of the consultants and staff's position.
Okay, I'm just going to interrupt you for a second there, Wes, because we have county council Tuesday and we have corporate services on Wednesday morning, so it leaves next week kind of minimal, but I'd really like you to try and get that meeting as soon as possible. And if they don't want the south of Division, so then if the city comes out, they're going to take it anyway. So why don't they give it to us now?
The short answer is there is significant planning basis and justification to exclude the south of Division Road. I mean, anytime that you do an official plan, it's at this level of detail. You then do a secondary plan, which is at this level of detail, tertiary plan, block plans, etc. The secondary plan was done at a very specific ground truth based series of studies. And so the agricultural areas and the natural heritage areas within the secondary plan area are actually more accurate than the work that the county is currently doing. And so, there's a significant basis to exclude the secondary plan study from each of the county maps. And we want to reiterate that with the county staff and the consultants when we meet with them.
Okay, so then they kept saying last week at the MCR meeting, oh, don't worry, every 5 years you're going to look at this. Well, I don't want to wait 5 years. I want this laid out now so that we know where we're headed. And our employment lands, you're saying they're exceeding our where we can have homes. Is that not the idea in the future, is to keep, if you're working here, live here?
That's the fundamental principle of the growth plan, is to try to create complete communities. And we're concerned that based on the development constraints on the employment land supply in Severn, that won't happen. So that's one of the things we want to reiterate with the county.
Yeah, because we've just gone through a 500 home approximately subdivision. It's like, let's get those people working here. But so I'll keep going on here. There's so they divide us into two regions, and you said that, and they've been doing that all along. And then they go, no, sorry, we don't mean to do that, but they are. And I tell you, the South aren't happy with it. I'm sure when you listened in on the meetings, the South are like, don't give it all to us. We can't afford this. Like, spread it out, put some in the North, put some employment up here, move more houses up here, because if you give it all to Bradford West S and all that down there, they cannot afford the infrastructure. And why are they not listening to this? Like, this is those municipalities saying, don't give us all this. We can't afford it.
The choice to divide the county into two regional market areas is a discretionary choice that the county and its consultants have. It's not mandated by the province. It's not required by their methodology. So it's a choice that Hemsen and the county currently anyways has done, but it's not required. And so if county council says to the consultants and staff, we don't want you to do that. We want you to direct growth throughout the county of Simcoe accordingly. The report will have to be prepared on that basis.
So we do speak up on that, but they're not listening to us, Wes. Like, I know Collingwood is saying too, we don't want all this. Don't give it to us. And the South End are saying the same thing, but Hemsen and staff are not listening.
Yeah, one of the challenges in this exercise is that you'll recall I said that the growth allocations are minimums, and what the province wants to ensure is that growth that is allocated to municipalities across Ontario, that it's being planned for. And there are municipalities in Ontario that are challenging that approach. Hamilton in particular, you'll recall from reading papers, their MCR process identified the need for additional settlement area, and their council said no. Their council said, we don't want to expand our settlement areas and our urban areas. We're going to direct staff to go back and look at, can we accommodate the forecast growth within our built up area, and basically to intensify development within Hamilton. I can tell you that's a major challenge to the obligations under the growth plan. I don't know what the province's response to that is going to be. But really the obligation for the county is to ensure that the forecast growth that's been provided by the province is planned for to 2051 within the entire county of Simcoe. How Simcoe does that is up to Simcoe. And right now the proposal is to have the two regional areas and to direct the majority of the growth to the South Regional Market area.
Okay, I'll leave it at that and look forward to that meeting. I think it's extremely important that we're there and we get our word out. Thank you, Russ.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Member Burkett, I think you had your sign up.
Thank you. Through the chair to Wes. And I asked at County Council, Wes, I'm struggling with this. I'm struggling to try and understand how they arrived at the mapping that they've given us. And I've spoken to a couple of the mayors, and I want to ask you as a planner, would there be any merit in inviting some of the staff, the planning staff from Toronto, to give us some insight as to how they arrived at all this? Because I'm confused as to why they would limit growth in our area. If they could give me a good explanation as to why, and further to Deputy Mayor Dunlop's comments, they're projecting growth and they've split our county into two sections, north and south. And I gave that gentleman, Steve, what for the last time we had a meeting. And thank you for not going into detail a third time for me to hear the same I won't go into detail as to what I thought about it, but anyways, would there be any merit in inviting staff from Toronto, and would they come, do you think, to County Council to give us an overview as to how they arrived at this mapping?
So, Mr. Chair, through to His Worship, you'll recall that Severn has already submitted comments to the province to ask them to review, in particular, the provincial natural heritage system mapping. I can't recall if there's been a response from the province to that. I guess the challenge here is the province has released their mapping, and they've obligated the county to refine that mapping, and then they've hamstrung them to a guideline that limits their ability to refine that mapping. When you talk to the province, they say, no, the obligation to refine this mapping is the county's, and the county can refine the mapping and then submit that refined mapping to the province for approval. What the county is saying is, well, we can only refine the mapping based on this very strict series of criteria that are set out in the guidelines. I'm going to suggest to you that the approach that we took in the review, particularly of the provincial NHS, was based on as close to real world ground truthing as we could, to exclude things like, for example, all the existing shoreline residential subdivisions where there are existing approved development rights and zoned rights within those areas. Proposed to remove the secondary plan area because there is a series of existing and approved development rights within that area of the Township of Severn. And I guess our only hope is that the planning staff and their consultants or County Council will see the merit of that approach and request and direct their team to update the mapping as we've requested and recommended. What are the chances of the province coming up? I think 0 to none. They're not going to change the map for Severn like they're not going to change the map for York Region or New Tecumseth. It's this process, this refinement process is our venue, our mechanism to try to get refinements to this mapping that make sense and that we can live with.
Supplementary through the chair, if I may. Wes, I understand what you're saying, but basically what they're doing is wasting all of our time, because they're telling us that these are the parameters, and Nathan said it, the new planner at the county said it, we're between two goalposts. We can't deviate from those two goalposts, but there's no room to change it. They're basically saying, why did we hire Hempson to do this on the county's behalf when they can't change anything? So they give us a presentation, and when one of the presenters doesn't have an answer, whoever this Nick gentleman is, he comes in and gives an overview, and he talks from out of both sides of his mouth, because he says one thing one time and then he says something else the next time. And I listened to him, I wrote everything down, but I am really struggling as to why and I'm happy to bring it forward. Like you're telling me now there's a deadline on the 29th, and that doesn't give us enough time, because I distinctly asked that they come back to our prospective municipalities and sit down with our planners and try and understand better where these refinements need to happen. And we do have a meeting on Tuesday, and I'm happy to phone the warden, but I don't see any merit in it because they're not listening to us, as Member Dunlop has stated. So further to that, it is an election year. Do we get our MPPs involved to voice our concerns to Minister Clark? Because it isn't working. And I'm reaching out to you as a planner, and you're telling me that you're not going, they would never entertain the thought of coming to speak to County Council as to how they arrived at this mapping. And I don't think the other municipalities understand the impact and the magnitude. Yes, they're going to look at it every 5 years, but where we're at today we're almost full. Our numbers are almost full based on the projections that we have for new home starts. Like, we have no place to grow.
Your Worship, Chair Taylor, through to His Worship. my observation of this process is that it has inherently built in a level of frustration for stakeholders, whether it's property owners, the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, in particular, I think municipal councils, because while the county is requesting comments, particularly on the draft mapping, and municipalities are outlaying significant time, effort, and money to meet those deadlines, the response has been that we can't make those changes, that that we're stuck with the provincial mapping, we're stuck with the provincial guidelines, etc. And I think that your frustration, residents' frustration, I know the OFA is frustrated with this process as well. Unfortunately, doesn't give a lot of comfort to people that their requests, concerns, and comments are going to be heard and responded to or reflected in this process itself. To some extent, I have sympathy for the planning staff at the county and the consultants in that their hands have been tied by the provincial mapping and the provincial guidelines. But I think the request to the county is be bold and make those changes, and request that the province approve those mapping that reflects those changes, and see what the province does. I think there's good reason and basis for it. And the province themselves are saying, no, we're leaving it up to the county to make those refinements.
Supplementary through the chair, we know that that's not the case, Wes. I heard you say that the province have dictated. It's no more than an exercise they've provided to the county. We need to go through the process. Every municipality is wasting hours and hours of time on this. They're not going to deviate or change from what their guidelines have stated. And I don't see any other recourse but to have their planning staff come up and tell us, put them on the spot, because they're great that they're down there in Toronto dictating the rules that they've outlined and set, but they're not telling us why. So they've got this guidebook, and I don't know if it came from the previous governments and this government it has inherited. That's the only way I can see it happening. So staff themselves at that level are dictating what needs to be done, and they're not backing off. And you know as well as I do, the mapping is incorrect. It's not right. So even though telling the county that they need to refine it, they're not listening to the county, and they're not listening to us. And to your point, all it has caused is frustration among all of us because we can't change anything. Anyways, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, and Your Worship, I would hope, and we'll try to set up that meeting with certainly with the county staff, and make sure that yourself and the deputy mayor are there, so that they hear these comments and your frustration directly. I think they did hear it last week at the April 12th meeting, but I think it would be helpful to have you at the meeting and to continue to express this frustration. I always said that there's no reason to go to a public and request public engagement and consultation if you're not going to listen. I think what we're requesting of the county, particularly the county staff, is to at least where there's good, solid reason and justification for the requests that have been made, to agree with those and to make those changes in the mapping.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Member Cox had her sign up.
Through the chair to Wes, I listened in on that meeting, and I was kind of appalled that they talked about how they were going to come to meet with the townships that had concern, because they said they were going to do that in December, and they never did it. Then I was interested to find out that they'd already met with Innisfil, but they hadn't met with anyone else that I know of. They could have, I don't know. But my concern is why it comes back to what Member Burkett said. He's talking about asking them to come up. Why wouldn't the townships, and the deputy mayor also said that the South don't want it. So why wouldn't, when the CAOs meet or the planners meet at the county, that they band together as one, instead of one comment here, one comment there, one comment here, one comment there? I'm thinking there's strength in numbers. So if they banded together and said to the county, this is what we want, this is how we want to look at this, would it not help a bit more? Because we're seeing the same thing in short-term rentals. We're seeing it now in this floating cottage thing. Everybody's off going this way, that way, spending staff money when they should be getting together and even get the Federation of Agriculture in. Like, I mean, everyone's going all over, but they're not getting to, and I'm not sure who the province is that's going to look at these recommendations and what we want. I don't know who they are. Are they planners? Are they part of municipal affairs? So it just seems to me that there's a lot of scattering. And I think that's what the province wants, because obviously it's really easy to look at ours and go, oh, those are just little things we're not looking at them and they don't fall in the guideline. But if you've got 16 municipalities together, that makes a difference. You're standing up like Hamilton did and saying, no, this is it.
Mr. Chair, through to Councillor Cox, I don't think there's a question there, but I don't disagree with any of the comments that you've made.
Okay, I don't know how you would do that. I don't know if the CAOs would do it or start it, but I'm just watching these meetings and going to them, and it's frustrating because the mayor speaks, the rest of the mayors, deputy mayors all look, and then after they go, yeah, we agree with you. Well, we don't, but they're not doing it. They've got to stand up together. This has to be a together act, in my mind.
Okay, thank you. I see Lori's put her screen on. I'll ask her if she has a comment, and then Member Dunlop.
Thank you, through the chair. Respectfully, I would suggest that the standing together would be done at the county, right? It would be hard for us to get the CAOs together to decide or to move things forward when county council has met and directed certain ways, right? We couldn't overdo that. So the coming together should be done by county councillors, I would think.
Okay, thank you. Member Dunlop and then Member Burkett.
So through the chair, I agree with the CAO. We sit there at the county. We are the ones that need to vote on this. And when we speak, Hempson and staff just totally ignore that we've ever said a thing. They are not listening. And it's us at the county level that need to change this, because it's been said before, county is to direct that staff what to do, but they're not listening, Wes. And for them to leave it to this date to get a meeting for the 29th is irresponsible on the staff and the Hempsons, the consulting firm at the county. I think it's horrible what they've done, and they are not listening.
Okay, thank you, Member Dunlop. Member Burkett.
Through the chair to Wes. Wes, the 29th, what exactly has to be submitted? I'm confused. Sorry. Just
to confirm, Mayor Burkett, the 29th is the deadline for comments on the draft provincial agricultural system mapping. So that's the only item that they're looking for comments by the April 29th. The other materials, so the draft lands needs assessment, the draft and sort of final provincial natural heritage system mapping will be the subject of further consultation through the public meeting process in June of this year. So it's the critical date is the 29th, but that only relates to the provincial agricultural mapping.
Supplementary through the chair, if I may, to Wes. Wes, how does the agriculture system mapping combine with the natural heritage mapping? Do they look at the agricultural one to come up with the heritage? Like, I don't understand how does one help the other? Like, I'm just trying to get my head around how it works.
So they're not mutually exclusive, Mr. Chair, through to His Worship. That was one of the recommendations that we had made to the county, was that the prime agricultural area should be removed from the provincial natural heritage system mapping, but they have not done that. So there are areas of agricultural lands, for example, that are covered by the provincial natural heritage system mapping. Agricultural uses are permitted to continue within the provincial NHS. but there are policy guidelines with respect to expansions and changes of land use within those agricultural lands that could be impacted by that provincial natural heritage system mapping. For example, if there was a on-farm related use rezoning that was required for a I'll pick something, a farm tour operation or something similar to that. Then if those lands fell within the provincial natural heritage system overlay mapping, then an EIS, for example, would be required to support that application. So they aren't mutually exclusive. So there are areas of prime agricultural land that are covered by the provincial natural heritage system mapping.
So supplementary through the chair, if I may, Wes, so the secondary plan that we have here, it's agricultural lands, and it's now been blanketed with the heritage mapping. So that's an example of this, correct?
Exactly. And so our argument and position is that the secondary plan is a separate designation within the county official plan. And what it says right in the county's official plan is, please refer to the Township of Severn official plan for the individual designations. And what we're recommending to the county is that should be continued, and the secondary plan should be excluded from the provincial natural heritage mapping, and it should be excluded from the provincial agricultural mapping as well, which is consistent with the approach that they've used in the past and consistent with the approach that they're using for settlement areas. There are no provincial natural heritage areas within the settlement areas in Simcoe. So, for example, there are no provincial NHS within Coldwater or within Westshore. Or in any of the settlement areas within the county of Simcoe. We're recommending a similar approach when it comes to the secondary plan area.
So supplementary through the chair, if I may, to Wes. So let's take, for example, Westshore, and we're close with this 500 home subdivision now. We're going to soon run out of lands in Westshore. So if they're going to expand, the only way that we're going to be able to expand is on the west side of Highway number 11, and those lands are agricultural. And I'm sure that they'll have heritage mapping protection on them as well. As when we do apply, and there's a process that we would have to go through, would the province entertain and remove that natural heritage mapping if and when we need to expand? Or how does that work?
Yeah, so it's through the county MCR process. If you need, if it's shown and justified that you need additional land for growth within your settlement areas, then there is a process through the MCR for a settlement area boundary expansion. And part of that process is evaluating, the adjacent lands and identifying priorities and options and alternatives to accommodate the future growth needs. And you would look at things like our lands designated agriculture, our lands within the provincial NHS, and you would evaluate, which way you would need that community to grow. It's similar to the process that the city of Orillia is going through right now. They've said that they need additional lands for growth, and they're going through the process to look at options and alternatives outside their boundary. Although I think I heard recently that the city is rethinking that process. So the short answer is, through a settlement area boundary expansion, you would evaluate alternatives, and you would pick the alternative that accommodates your growth, but also has the least impact on natural heritage, agricultural lands, and other land uses within that area adjacent to the settlement. So yes, there is a mechanism to do it, but it's tied to the MCR, and it's tied to a study that's required, and there will be costs associated with that as well.
So, sorry, through the chair, supplementary, if I may. So you're saying to me that they could turn it down because of this natural heritage mapping on it, if they could?
The short answer is, depending on the nature of the features and functions, hopefully you would be able to avoid those areas. But yes, if there would be a significant impact on those environmental areas, that provincial natural heritage system the county could refuse that settlement area boundary expansion application.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think Member Dunlop would like to speak.
One last question. So that agricultural land, which is south of Division, is really important for us, and it's important for our group, the planners and US and Mayor and I, to be together with them before the 29th. So just a question, do you think if the mayor and I got a hold of the warden and CAO Aiken to say, come on guys, we need this meeting now, like it's the 29th, it's right there on our shoulders. How do you feel, Member Burkett?
Well, I'm happy to extend it. I can't believe that they're having it on the 29th. I'm happy to extend it through the chair. Sorry, Chair.
Yep, no problem.
No, but
Wes, you're going to comment.
My question is to Member Burkett. Do you not think that you or I or both of us should get a hold of the CAO and the warden and say, look, this is really important. We need this meeting. And well, here you are, and you're not allowing it.
Through the chair to Member Dunlop, I was going to phone the warden and explain to him that they had promised us a meeting before any decisions were to be made or any deadlines. And now I'm hearing of the 29th and the deadline, and they still haven't met with our staff to hear our concerns. So I'm happy to do that.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Member Cox would like to speak.
Yeah, through the chair to Wes, if there isn't a meeting before the 29th, does that mean it's not written in stone what happens? You're saying we still have public meetings, we still have recourse.
Correct. So the 29th is, Mr. Chair, the 29th is a deadline for comments. No decisions with respect to the draft provincial agricultural system mapping will be made on the 29th or after the 29th. They will then produce a updated proposed provincial agricultural mapping, and that will be subject to a public review and engagement process through the Planning Act in, I believe, June of this year, both a public open house and a public meeting. And it won't be until those matters come back to County Council will the final decision be made. Of course, I always encourage people to get involved early in the process and stay involved in the process so that your comments and concerns are known throughout the process. And hopefully we can get that changed before it makes it to the public meeting in June of this year.
So further to that, you've already made those comments about the secondary plan and the other ones too. Yeah. So I guess the biggest thing is if the county councilors are the ones that are going to help band together, then they all need to say something at the meetings and stand up and do something, because at that April 12th meeting, Mayor Burkett and maybe two others.
Okay, Member Burkett.
Through the chair to Wes. Wes, is there any merit in us extending this past the 29th, or do we have extra comments that our staff need, and you as well, to inform the county? Like, I'm happy to extend it if we can. Is there going to be any merit in doing it?
So, Chair Taylor, through to his worship, I think we can meet the April 29th deadline with respect to the proposed agricultural mapping. I don't think that is a challenge because it's a fairly narrow, and really what we're going to be doing is reiterating the information and recommendations that we've already made. Obviously, more time as it relates to the other components would be helpful. So if you're able to convince the county to extend that deadline, that would be it would be helpful all around. But I think we can meet the deadlines, understanding that there will be opportunities for further input and comments through the June public open houses and public meetings as well.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm just wondering if we'd let Wes go.
Sorry, Chair. I didn't hear what you said. You cut out, Chair. Sorry. Could you repeat?
If Andrea or Katie would like to comment what they're seeing, what's going on. Hi, Andrea.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. Yes, certainly. I'm currently following up with the county right now from a staff level on the meeting date that they have offered us. We're just trying to confirm which availability they have at this point in time, and we'll get that set up as soon as possible. So again, we are following up on that with the county right now.
Okay, thank you. So any other comments from the committee? Okay, Allison, if you have a motion there.
I do. So the motion reads that the presentation from MHBC Barrie regarding the County Simcoe Municipal Comprehensive Review planning matters be received, and that the Township of Severn submit a response to the County Simcoe based on the various matters related to the County MCR outlined in the presentation, and further that comments due prior to the May 4th council meeting be submitted to the county prior to ratification by Township Council.
Okay, we have a mover there. Moved by Member Dunlop, seconded by Member Burkett. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, G2, and I'm going to ask if Member Dunlop can chair this one. This is my conflict here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Wes.
Okay, G2, Corporate Service Report, C22001, Reseg Bay Chamber of Commerce, Reconnect Port Severn Festival. Read in the report there that they'd asked for $3,000, and Andrew was going to try and find that for us. So any comments? Member Cox?
Yeah, I agree with the recommendation. I think we should just give them the $3,000.
Okay, anybody else? Any comments? Okay, Allison, could you read that motion, please?
Certainly. The motion reads that Corporate Services Report number C22-001 dated April 20th, 2022 regarding the Seg Bay Chamber of Commerce Reconnect Port Severn Festival be received, and that the $3,000 funding request for the Reconnect Port Severn Festival be approved.
Okay, a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Member Cox, second by Member McIntyre. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Member, back to you, Chair Taylor.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go to G3, Planning Report P22-16, Greenwood Landing Subdivision. So if Andrea would like to speak to that.
Thank you very much, Chair Taylor. So as you've noted, this is a report on the Greenwood Landings subdivision in the settlement area of Coldwater. Before you, as an appendix to the report, is a draft subdivision agreement for 144 units. A nice balance of singles and townhouses proposed here. An alternative tree planting plan is also included in the report. Typically, we would look for 2 trees per lot, but given the smaller lot size for the townhouses, an alternative plan is proposed that staff find acceptable. So if committee is in favor of the agreement, we will bring forward the necessary bylaws on May the 4th. Thank you.
Okay, anybody from the committee has questions for that? If not, then if Allison could read a motion, please.
Certainly. The motion reads that planning report number P22-016 dated April 20th, 2022, with respect to a proposed subdivision agreement, tree planting plans, and the removal of the holding provisions for 27 Gill Street, 453211 Ontario Limited be received, and further that the Township of Severn approve the subdivision agreement substantially in the form of that included as attachment 3 to planning report P22-016, and further that the Township of Severn accept the proposed tree planting plan substantially in the form of those included as attachment 5 to planning report P22-016, and further that bylaws for the removal of the holding provisions and authorizing the clerk to execute the subdivision agreement be presented to council for further consideration at the next available meeting.
Any comments on the motion? If not, I'll ask for a mover. Moved by Member Dunlop, second by Member Cox. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, we have H, new business, E2.3 brought forward by Member Cox.
Yeah, this is through the chair to Andrea, I think, or Katie. In this More Homes for Everyone, there was feedback on housing needs in rural and northern municipalities, and there were 4 comments that could be made. And I don't know if you have made questions and answered those 4 questions, because I was kind of thinking it was important because we're rural Ontario, and the same with the missing middle housing and gentle density, including supports for multi-generational housing. So I wasn't sure if our staff had commented on these, because I believe that we should comment, because if we don't comment, then we really don't have a right to say too much, but at least we've put forth our ideas.
If I may, Chair Taylor, through you, yes, to Member Cox, thank you for bringing this to our attention. It's actually timely. The county has reached out to staff to have a meeting tomorrow regarding the various proposals as part of this initiative. So we certainly will be discussing it tomorrow to see whether the county will be making an overall submission or whether the individual municipalities should be making submissions. So we will look into that further and report back as necessary.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. You have a motion for that one, Allison?
I'm muted. It's not necessary if staff are just working on it, and Member Cox is fine with the direction the staff are working on. That's fine.
Okay, very good. So no closed session. We have a motion to adjourn.
Certainly, the motion reads that this meeting be and is hereby now adjourned at 10:45 a.m.
Okay, we got a mover there. Moved by Member Stevens, second by Member Bettesworth. All in favor? Carried. Hello and goodbye, Jim. And we'll talk to you soon. Have a great day, everybody.